Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, welcome back to SJMMA. Today, I'm doing a tier list, a UFC Bantamweight tier list. So I've got 20 of the best Bantamweights in UFC history and we're going to rank them on this lovely little thing I've got here. So let's get into it. Just before we start, it is important that you remember that the Bantamweight weight class is quite new into the UFC. It's not that much more than a decade old. So a lot of the fighters here are going to be quite recent. And even the guys at the bottom are still top fighters, okay? Just to make that clear. Our tiers are... Number 1, at the very top we got Different Gravy. A returning feature, one I always use in these. And then below that we got Upper Benjamins. You know, they're really good but not quite at that level. In the middle we got Mustard. Great word in my terminology. Underneath that we got Proper Good, which it kind of has a lot of meanings as we will get onto later in the video. And then we got Best of the Rest. They deserve to be on the list but they're not quite as good as the rest on the video, but they're better than the rest of the division. If that makes any sense. Let's go. Only one place we can start, people. The man on the marquee this weekend, Sean O'Malley. I'm going to put him Upper Benjamins, I believe. Even though he already has some great wins over the likes of Yan and Sterling, I still believe there are questions that need to be answered with Sean. He needs to get a defence under his belt, which I think he will do this weekend, by the way. But I can't put him any higher than this. But I believe, at the moment at least, he's better than Mustard. So I think this is fair. The issue I have with O'Malley is I look at 135 and there are some terrible matchups for him. I think Cory Sandhagen's a bad one. I think Merab's a bad one. I think Vera's quite a good one. I think he will win, as I just said. But I think he will lose his belt at some point in the next 12, 18 months, in my opinion. Maybe he won't. Maybe he moves up to 145. Who knows? But for me, his already prior accomplishments mean he is a solid and undeniable Upper Benjamins at this point. But he does have the ability to go up if he stays in the division and continues to win. Up next, his opponent, the only man that's ever beaten him, Marlon Vera. I'm going to put him in Proper Good. I think that's probably fair. His longevity throughout the division has been really impressive. Like I said, the 135 weight class in the UFC is not that long in the tooth, and he's been there for most of its kind of journey over the last 12, 13 years, I think it's been. Obviously, his marquee wins have been over Cruz, Edgar, Rob Font, and the controversial one over O'Malley. But I will say that both Cruz and Edgar were over the hill by the time he fought them. However, there's still names on his resume that have to be considered here. In my head, he is a little bit like Dan Hooker is at lightweight, or a little bit like Luke Kay is at welterweight. On their day, they're dangerous enough and they can beat anybody. But there is a level of opposition who seem to be too good for him. And I think... for that reason, I can't put Vera any higher than Proper Good. I think he is Proper Good. He has a very unique way of going about things. I said it in a recent video. He loses fights until he wins them. That can be difficult at times. I don't think O'Malley will find it difficult this weekend, but I think Marlon Vera can still beat 90% of the 135 weight class. But I think everybody ranked above him at the moment probably beats him, if I'm honest. Next up, a very difficult man to rank at the moment, Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, I said earlier that I think Proper Good is going to have a lot of meanings. I'm going to explain why I put Umar here. I think he has the potential to become UFC Bantamweight champion. So you're probably thinking, why is he not any higher? Well, he got dropped in his last fight, and his best win is still Raoni Barcelos. I cannot put him any higher. You could argue he could go below Best of the Rest at the moment, but I have to factor in his ability in terms of potential. That's why I'm going to put him here. Umar seems quite keen on Cory Sandhagen next. I think he needs one more in between. He could look at a Rob Font. He could look at a Pedro Munhoz if he beats Kyler Phillips. I know he's ranked lower than Umar, but in my opinion, he has to go through a test like that first. You can't just jump straight up to a real top guy, in my opinion. If he does, I think he loses. We are going to move on to New York's least favourite New Yorker, former champion Aljamain Sterling. I'm going to put him Upper Benjamins above Sean O'Malley. Now, I know what you're thinking. Let me explain. Aljo's reign as Bantamweight champion was not without its controversy. Of course, the way he won the belt was controversial. The fact he fought a one-shouldered TJ Dillashaw and Cejudo hadn't fought in years, and the second Yan fight was close. But however you want to put it, he has those names on his record. He's got Dillashaw, he's got Cejudo, and he's got Yan twice. And he has the most wins in Bantamweight history. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, even if you don't like him, he's different gravy. Next up, the geezer who literally epitomises Best of the Rest. It has to be Pedro Munhoz, and of course he's going in that section of the tier list. Little Brazilian nutcase, relatively well-rounded. He's a tough night out for pretty much anybody at any point. He's got a chin made of fucking... I was going to say granite, but granite's not even the right word. It's stronger than granite. It's insane. He deserves a place on this list. He never fought for a belt. He never will. But he was one of those guys in kind of the primitive years of the division that was almost... I don't like the word gatekeeper very much, but I mean it nicely here with Pedro. That's kind of what he's become. And every single weight class needs that. He's a bit like what RDA is at lightweight now, if that makes sense. Or welterweight, depending on how he feels. Fucking nutter. Anyway, I love Pedro Munhoz, but he has to go in this area of the list. Right, this individual, okay. On current form, up there. On watchability, down here. Overall, he's mustard. I mean, last 3 wins. Aldo, then Yan, then Henry Cejudo. I don't need to say a lot more than that. Is he exciting to watch? No. Is he particularly technically skilled in mixed martial arts? No. Is he damn effective? Yes, he is. There's not a lot more I can really say about him. I don't want to be offensive in this video, even though I think he's a bit of a knob. But, yeah, he is a very effective mixed martial artist. Not necessarily the most technical, but he gets the job done a lot of the time. And he is mustard. In terms of that weight class, he has the best cardio it's ever seen. And he has a good chance of beating O'Malley if that fight happens. So, I'm going to put him in. Right, next up, in my opinion, still the best bantamweight of all time, Mr. Dominick Cruz. He's going at the top of different gravy. I guess there's a little bit of you can't beat the original. He obviously was the bantamweight champion in the WEC and then he carried over into the UFC. And if it was not for his injuries, he would have made a lot more defences, I can guarantee you that. Like I said, this is still a very, very young weight class within the UFC. And there's not been that many full-time champions. And I think it won't be long until somebody does completely overtake Dom Cruz. But for now, I think his place at the top is still safe. Just. Next up, I'm going to do a man who ended his career with the UFC really poorly, right? But at a time, he was right up there. I'm going to do Rafael Assunção, and I'm going to put him... I think I'm going to put him in proper good at the front for now. Now, this guy has some superb wins. He's beaten Pedro Munhoz. He's beaten Marlon Moraes. He's beaten Aljamain Sterling. He's beaten TJ Dillashaw. Now, Aljo and TJ were very young when they fought him, so you can factor that in, but he still beat them. And they are, in my opinion, 2 of the top 3 in the division's history. So that does factor in here, but they were obviously on the come up, so it's not quite as impressive as, let's say, an O'Malley win over Sterling, if that makes sense. Unfortunately, he lost a rematch against Marlon Moraes, which turned out actually to be an eliminator, and Moraes went on to fight Cejudo for the title. So he could have fought for a belt, but he never did. I don't think he's a legend of the division, so to speak, but he deserves his flowers, as at one point he was a top 5 contender, and a solid one at that. My personal favourite bantamweight on the roster right now is Cory Sandhagen, and for me he's top of mustard ahead of Merab. One of my favourite things about watching MMA is we get to see a lot of young fighters evolve, over time in some cases or overnight in others. Sandhagen's grappling has come on leaps and bounds since his loss against Aljamain Sterling, by submission. That blend of kind of fleet-footed striking and an offensive wrestling base is very Dominick Cruz. Now, of course, the footwork of Dominick Cruz has not been replicated and probably never will be, but a lot of the kind of the basic things that they both share are definitely there. Out of everybody in the bantamweight weight division right now, if there was one guy that I had to hang my hat on and say that guy will be champion one day, I would put it on Cory Sandhagen. Up next, I'm going to go for Mr. Deiveson Figueiredo. Now, on the one hand, you don't want to count that much into his flyweight accomplishments, but it also explains how he came into a new weight class and fought straight at the top straight away. So you kind of have to balance it out in terms of mentioning it and not mentioning it. So that's going to be kind of difficult, but I think I'm going to put him at the top of proper good. I was impressed with him against Rob Font. I thought it was a clear and decisive victory. I know a lot of people pick Rob, but I always had a feeling that Figueiredo's kind of physicality would easily translate up 10 pounds, and it did. He did very well. Very good debut in a new weight class. I would love to put him higher than this. I think he definitely could be mustard, and he could work his way up to the belt, maybe, but if I would, I'll be factoring too much of flyweight in, and I don't want to do that. Up next, another interesting career that I'm going to try and decipher here. It's Henry Cejudo. Now, if he'd have left and never came back, he'd be right in between Aljo and Cruz at the top. He came back. It's fresh in my mind. He's up at Benjamin's, but he's above O'Malley. He should never have come back. I mean, who am I to tell an Olympic gold medalist not to compete? I'm not. But when he retired, he kind of left as the mystical figure of Triple C. If he was to retire now, he would retire as Henry Cejudo. I hope that makes sense. And for me, it does. It doesn't completely damage his legacy and his resume, but it kind of has taken the mystique off of him a little bit. I'm trying to word this right, people. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. This is the difficult one, beautiful people, because I'm going to have to rank one of my favourite fighters of all time to watch, Mr. Cody Garbrandt. Now, after the Cruz performance, he's off the charts. He's all the way up there, but you have to factor in the downfall. And I think I'm going to put him mustard in front of Cory Sandhagen just. I remember being, I think I was 15 years old, and it was like 3 AM and I was watching UFC 207 and I saw what Garbrandt did to Dominick Cruz. I thought, no one's beating that guy. Nobody, ever. And obviously what happened, which was a shame, because I really liked watching Garbrandt fight. That version of Garbrandt is the best bantamweight ever. That solo individual performance was the best bantamweight ever, but you have to factor in the downfall, unfortunately. I'd love to see him get all the way back up and try and win the belt back. I don't think it's possible now. I think UFC 300 should have been the rematch with Dom Cruz. Why it's Figueiredo, I don't know. He's going to get chinned, which is going to be sad, but I can never, ever, ever forget that performance. That's why he's as high as he is. And he's a former champion, so that does hold a little bit of weight. Next up, the man with the golden chin, Lord Farquhar himself, Urijah Faber. Now, it's based on influence over the division. He's right at the top. But overall, I'm going to put in mustard, but behind Cody, just. If Urijah Faber never came into MMA, there's a chance we don't have a UFC bantamweight weight class, and by extension, the flyweights. 1, his success in the WEC, and 2, obviously, Team Alpha Male. The amount of champions and top contenders that has made over the smaller weight classes is insane. There was obviously TJ and Cody, but even now they've got like Song Yadongs at the top of the bantamweight weight class. There's such a lineage with the smaller weight classes into that gym, and Urijah Faber's a huge part of that. And he's the best bantamweight never to win the title, in my opinion, so he should be ranked highly on his ability as well. But he was a bit one-dimensional. Next up, it has to be the Magic Man, Marlon Moraes. Now, I love this guy. I loved watching him so much, so you can call me biased if you want. I don't care. He's going at the very top of proper good. Don't even come at me. He had an even worse end to his MMA career than a Sunsao did. It was abysmal, but he was little, he was fast, he was powerful, he was entertaining, exciting. I just loved him, so I'm going to put him higher than he probably deserves to be. If you've got a problem, well, suck me balls. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, this is hard, people. This is really difficult because I really thought he had bantamweight GOAT potential, but Petr Yan has to go no higher than the bottom of Upper Benjamins. That could even be too high, but that's where I'm going to put him. Why did you do it, Petr? Why did you throw that stupid illegal knee? Why? You were on the course to beating Aldo. You could still be champion now, fella. What are you thinking? I don't know what you were thinking, but it was fucking wrong. Such a shame, man, because he's so watchable when he's on form. The way he can sort of flow through combinations, switch stances with his boxing is unbelievable. He's higher than Merab. I know Merab beat him, but anyway, I think he can still win a belt. I believe in him. I'd love to see it happen. He always comes across like a lovely little nutty fruit case, and I think it would be brilliant if he could win the belt back. So, come on, Petr, please, mate. Let's start winning, yeah? Alright, who's next? Oh yeah, okay, Rob Font. To be honest, I just wanted a little mate there for old Pedro at the bottom. But in all honesty, Rob Font, I'm going to put him below Pedro, fuck it. He's a good fighter. He is a good fighter. His jab is superb. I'll say that to start with. I thought his knockout over Adrian Yanez was a superb finish, but it took me by that much of a surprise that it made me realise that if I'm surprised by you putting on a good performance, you're not that great of a bantamweight. If you're either average or you're a prospect that's not quite ready to make the jump up yet, he will beat you, and he might finish you occasionally. But if you are a proven contender in the top kind of 8, 9, 10-ish, you're going to beat Rob Font. Again, I hate the word gatekeeper, but I think as Pedro Munhoz looks to retire, his kind of spot in the division will be taken by Rob Font. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, we've now got Team Alpha Male's newest member of the Bantamweight Elite, Song Yadong. It's crazy to think that Song's still only, 26, 27? It feels like he's been around for a while, and he has. We haven't seen him against elite opposition since he lost against Cory Sandhagen. Yes, we've seen him win, but I mean, Ricky Simone and Chris Gutierrez are decent, but they're not on the level of a Sandhagen or a Petr Yan, so this weekend's interesting for it. In terms of other bantamweights, he's incredibly physically imposing. I think he's a much kind of thicker set than most of them, and he's got a decent amount of height as well. I think he'll fancy himself against Yan, and if he can beat Yan, he's in the title picture. But for now, I'm going to put him bottom of mustard, I think. Okay, the interesting one, people, Mr. TJ Dillashaw. Now, I'm going to have to put him in different gravy, but he's going number 2 in between Aldo and Cruz, because I know what you're all thinking about the EPO and the drugs and shit. I'll explain. In this sport, we have to take things at face value. He failed a drug test when he was trying to make flyweight. We will never know if he was on it for his whole career, or for his entire title reign at least. We don't know. However, I'll tell you what we do know about TJ Dillashaw. He ended the unbeaten run of Renan Barao. He knocked out his bitter rival Cody Garbrandt twice. He beat Renan Barao twice. He beat Rafael Assunção in the rematch after he lost the first one. He beat Joe Soto, whatever. You get what I mean? He has a resume there that, as much as it may be shrouded in controversy, we don't know when he started with them drugs. And we can't speculate, because we'll never know for sure. So, I'm going to take his career at face value and put him where his results deserve to put him. We just mentioned him there, Mr. Renan Barao. A lot of you guys may not know that name, but he came into the UFC like a freight train, won the interim belt and got promoted to undisputed after a Dominick Cruz injury. Shock there. He was unbeatable for a time. Completely and utterly unbeatable. Until he was beatable. And then he was beatable again. And again. And again. His rise was so quick, at least into notoriety, and okay, we know who this guy is now. Of course, his unbeaten run lasted a long period of time, but in terms of his time at the very top, it was quick. His downfall was even quicker. He was out the UFC, I think within 3 years of holding the title. It was insane. I have to put him in mustard for that reason. If he'd have held on to the belt and defended it, especially if he turned away the rising TJ Dillashaw, that would have been insane. But he didn't. So he's kind of on a similar level to Garbrandt, but he did beat Urijah Faber, so he has to go above him. So I'm going to put him in between Cody and Urijah. And finally, Mr. Jose Aldo. Again, a similar situation to what I said about Deiveson Figueiredo. Of course, you don't want to really factor in his featherweight things, but I'm going to put him at the top of proper good, because he had a proper good run at 135. He really did. In my opinion, he only looked out of his depth once, and that was when he fought Prime Yan. The Merab fight was hard to watch, but not because he was dominated, because he wasn't. It was I don't want to piss on him too much, but it was, out of all the things Merab's ever done, that's the one that pissed me off the most. The last time we ever saw Jose Aldo, he was being used as a fucking poster on a wall. I don't like that. Yes, I know I have him above Marlon Moraes, even though Marlon beat him in Aldo's Bantamweight debut. Whatever, I don't care. But anyway, that wraps up the video. I hope you enjoyed the tier list. Here's the completed thing here. If you disagree, do let me know. If you don't, you're intelligent. I'll catch you very soon. Enjoy 299. Take care.